There are two things that have radically changed or transformed my life. Um, Two Dances with Death, and the other one was my trip to Myanmar, which used to be called Burma. Um, because of those, the two dances and the trip to Myanmar, because of that, my life is radically different than it was before. Um, and my Weltanschauung, my worldview has changed, radically changed. Um, and in many ways, the transformation has kind of a haunting effect upon me. I told you about being in Myanmar and going to a protest rally, and I've written about this many, many times. I was invited by Min Kunan, who I consider kind of the Bobby Kennedy of present day Myanmar. And Min Kunan invited me to a luncheon on their Independence Day, January 4th. I was there and met all the old guard of what we call the civil rights movement, or what they call human rights movement. And during the luncheon, he leaned over and said, would you like to go to a protest rally? And he invited me to a protest rally at the area where the center of the area is called Shula Pagoda, where there's a Buddhist pagoda. And going to a protest rally in Myanmar, which is a military dictatorship, and going to the Shula Pagoda area where the protest rally was going to be, did transform my life. For those who don't know much about Myanmar history, Shula Pagoda in August 8th, 1988, Aung San Suu Kyi spoke there, and the military dictatorship came in and killed hundreds or even thousands of people because they were protesting. And so I went to this rally and spent 2 or 3 hours along with a tour guide that I was a good friend of, or friend with, Tin Hutton. And we just simply walked around, and I took pictures, and I could hear in the background those people I had lunch with making their speeches. But I can't speak a word of Burmese, and so there was this kind of background noise. But I kid you not, what I heard clearly in my mind was Joan Baez singing, "We Shall Overcome." And so I was in Yangon at Shula Pagoda listening in my head to Joan Baez singing, and that just simply brought me back to the civil rights movement in the 60s. And that's kind of one of those kind of positive hauntings. And that haunting changed who I am. A couple of weeks ago in Orlando, some crazy terrorist goes out on a shooting spree. Which it is crazy. But what's more troubling is that Congress isn't going to address any sort of gun control. Not because Americans don't want it, but because the NRA doesn't want it. And so John Lewis, who was nearly killed on a march from Selma to Montgomery back in the 60s, has a sit-in in the well of the House of Representatives. Trust me, I watched much of it. And it was one of those hauntings again. I mean, I remember sit-ins and I remember protest rallies, and that was a haunting. But what was more haunting was there I was sitting there watching it on television, and then I heard it again. We shall overcome. That was the anthem of the civil rights movement. I was in Myanmar a couple years ago, and that was all I could hear in my head. And then I hear many of the Democratic Congress people from throughout our country were down there at a protest rally in the House of Representatives because the Republicans didn't have the guts to stand up to the NRA. As Senator Elizabeth Warren says, unless they do something, they will have blood on their hands. Back in the 60s, those involved in the civil rights movement didn't know the precise date when we'd finally get to racial equality in America. We didn't know, but we knew that we would get to that date sometime. When I was in Yangon a couple years ago, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know when Myanmar is going to get democracy, but they will get there. And I don't know when America, and particularly Congress, is going to stand up to the NRA. But I'm telling you now, we will get there. And all the senseless killing in America, massacres of large numbers of people or just individual people, that needs to be addressed. We're losing lives for no real reason because some people in Congress don't have the guts to stand up to the NRA. And why don't they? Because they need the money and they need their support, or they'll lose their job. People are losing their lives because of cowardice. But regardless of the cowards, we shall overcome. Take care.